October 2025, spooky season has arrived. Some would call it October. Some would call it Joshtober. Even less would call it Mashtober. But today, we're going to do Mashtober. If you've been a Letterboxd user for, I think, 12 years now, they've done something called Hooptober, where somebody picks categories for films that they want to watch during October, during spooky season, and to see what horror films fit into those vibes. Over the past couple weeks, I've kind of made my own categories, took some from Hooptober and Letterboxd, and then just some from whatever I've wanted to do. So today, what we're going to do is I'm going to run through all the categories I created and all the films that I'm going to watch for those categories. Obviously, October is 31 days, with Halloween being the last day. I don't think I'm going to get through all 50, 60-something films, but I'm going to try and get through as many as I possibly can. Without further ado, I'm Josh from Just Mash. Let's figure it out. First category is franchise or trilogy, and my selection for that is the Fear Street trilogy from Netflix. Now, I've seen the first Fear Street film several years ago, and I enjoyed it. It's not great, nothing special, but it fits the Halloween, October vibes, and it was good enough to make me want to watch the other two. The first film is Fear Street 1994, the second film is Fear Street 1978, and the third film is Fear Street 1666. I think there's a fourth one that either just came out or is coming out, or maybe I'm totally wrong on that, but if it's around, I'll try to get around to watching it, but who knows, we'll see. The next category is films that take place in one location, and for that I have chosen the 1980 film Terror Train. Not too much to say about this one, but essentially it is a cheesy 80s horror film where a serial killer goes around killing people on a train. Will it be good? Probably not, but I'm excited to watch it anyway. The next category is zombies, and for that I picked I Walked with a Zombie from 1943. Now there's so many different zombie films out there, and I've got a few on this list, so I kind of wanted to go with something different, something unique, and for that I went for an older zombie film, one that predates Night of the Living Dead, and it's one that takes place in New Orleans and has to do with voodoo. I've heard better things about this film than the other ones I've mentioned so far, so I'm excited to give it a shot. The next category on the list is vampires, and for that I've chosen 1987's Near Dark, directed by Kathryn Bigelow. I've heard a lot about this film over the years, but I've never gotten around to see it. The premise is interesting to me. It's about a boy who falls in love with a girl who ends up being a vampire, and he reluctantly becomes one himself. Really, Kathryn Bigelow's reputation precedes her. She's got a lot of great films, a lot of critically acclaimed films, but I've never really seen any of her older work, only more of her more recent stuff. So I'm interested to see what she does with the genre and with vampires. The next category is aliens, and for that I picked 2023's No One Will Save You. Now, I heard a lot about this film when it came out. I think it was a Hulu film. I think it stars Caitlin Dever, but essentially the gimmick that I've heard is that there's no dialogue in this film whatsoever, but it's about an alien invasion or alien abduction with one girl alone in her house. Seems creepy. I've seen people recommend it to me before. I'm excited to give it a look. Next category is werewolves, and for that I've gone with the classic The Wolfman from 1941. I've seen a few Universal monster movies. Most of them that I've seen I like, but I don't like all of them. The Wolfman, however, is one that I have never seen before, and I figure if I'm going the werewolf category, I might as well go with the original. The next category I've gone with is films that were straight to DVD, and for that I've gone with 1991's Demonic Toys. Straight to DVD might seem like a weird category to some people, but for me, a physical media collector, it's a genre of film that I actually really love and can think back to my childhood of going to Walmart and finding movies that weren't released in theaters, taking them home and watching them. Especially within the horror genre, a lot of stuff, just because of the budget and because of the nature of the films, don't make it to theaters. So seeking out horror films that were straight to DVD is something that interests me. Now, I talk that up as if it's going to be the Citizen Kane of horror films, but Demonic Toys probably sucks, in all honesty, but I'm hoping that it has some camp value. I know it takes place in the same universe as the Puppet Master films, which I watched last year and actually really enjoyed. The next category is British horror. For British horror, to me, there was one film that stood out head and shoulders above everything else, and that is Ghostwatch. Now, if you don't know about Ghostwatch, essentially it was a made-for-TV faux documentary that was essentially presented as if it was a real telecast. Essentially, they got a lot of the most famous British television anchors and acted as if they were following a live news story about a haunted house and presented it as if it was really happening. Some of the lore for this film is crazy, but it essentially terrorized all of Britain from what I understand and has grown such a notorious reputation since, and it's one that I really want to see. The next category is Dimension Films, and for that I have chosen Dracula 2000 from the year 2000. Now, Dimension Films is a movie studio that I'm sure resonates with all of us from the era that I kind of grew up in. So it was kind of interesting to pick what Dimension film I hadn't seen that I was ready to watch. And Dracula 2000 is one of those films that I've heard about since I was a kid, just from scavenging random Wikipedia pages and landing on. Always wanted to see, but never really got the opportunity to. I've heard it's horrible, but I'm excited to watch it anyway. The next category is Oscar nominated, and for that I've gone with 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I'm not sure how much of a horror film this is. You know, I know it's from the 60s, and on Letterboxd it's classified as a horror film, but it's the only horror film that I had not seen that was nominated for Best Picture. Really, it's just one of the biggest films that are out there that I have yet to see, so I figure, you know, now's as good a time as any to watch Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. The next category is The Muppets. For that, I've chosen The Muppets Haunted Mansion from 2021. Now, if you want to fight over, is this a movie, is this a TV special, is it a Disney Plus special, I really don't care. It does not change anything about my list. But I love The Muppets, I love Haunted Mansion, I love goofy, campy, horror, October vibes, even if it's, you know, made for kids or adults. So to me, this was an absolute layup as something that I wanted to watch this month. The next category is cannibalism. For that, I've chosen 1980's Cannibal Holocaust. Now, this is a film that everybody kind of talks about within horror as one of the most messed up, one of the most demented horror films. There's discussion about, did they kill live animals while filming? Some people thought they killed real people while filming. But it's one of those films that it's hard to say you're a true horror fan have you not seen it yet. The next category is Edgar Allan Poe. Now, my initial thought here was that I would pick an adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe story, but instead I went with 2012's The Raven. Now, this film is about Edgar Allan Poe's last days on Earth, and his death had some controversy and mystery to it. But essentially, there is a serial killer that's going around killing people in ways seen in Edgar Allan Poe's stories, so he has to essentially investigate the murders in his final days on Earth. Seems like a fun take on Poe and his mythology, so I'm excited to watch it. The next category is space horror, and for that, I went with 1992's Alien 3. There's only 2 Alien films left in the franchise that I have not seen, and we'll get to the second one here in a second. But Alien 3 is one that's always interested me. I don't think it looks good visually. I don't like the look and feel of it compared to the other films, but it's a David Fincher film, so I have to see it eventually. Next up, we have futuristic horror, and for that, I went with Alien Resurrection from 1997. Pretty much the same thing that I said about Alien 3 could be said for this, minus the David Fincher aspect, but it's the only 2 left in the franchise I haven't seen, so I figure why not? Let's get them out of the way. The next category I went with is picking a movie from the year you were born, and for me that is 1998's Dark City. I pretty much know practically nothing about this film except for the crazy set design and stills from the film that I've seen on the internet. Truly looks like an insane psychopathic trip through sci-fi and horror, and I am so excited to watch it. Next category is silent films, and for that I went with 1925's Phantom of the Opera. Another Universal monster movie, one that I haven't seen but have heard so much about. Something that I really like about the Universal monster films is not only are they horror, but they're tragedies. There's an actual good storyline to them. There's great, core emotions tied to the characters, and it feels like Phantom of the Opera, maybe above all the other ones, has that emotional core that I search for. The next category is holiday horror, and for that I went with 2023's Thanksgiving. Now, I'm not really an Eli Roth fan. I don't really like too many of his movies that much, and I don't think that this one necessarily looks particularly good, but I really love specific setting films like this. It takes place over the Thanksgiving holiday, and I love films that kind of carry that atmosphere and they're tied to a specific part of the year. Also, I know the killer in the film has gained some notoriety, and I kind of like having those modern-day icons like the Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger. I like seeing new ones created as we go on. The next category is psychological horror, and for that I've gone with 1990's Jacob's Ladder. This is a film about a war vet coming home with PTSD, and through his dreams and nightmares, he kind of starts to spiral and lose his sanity. It's one I've wanted to watch for a long time, one of the earliest films on my watch list. I've wanted to see this thing for years, so I'm so excited to give it a watch. The next category is cults, and for that I've gone with 1971's The Devils. Directed by Ken Russell, this film is maybe one of the most notorious horror films, being banned in several countries for a very long time. But it's a film that deals with witchcraft and possession within the Catholic Church. It's a film that Warner Brothers has kind of neglected for a long time, yet randomly appeared in the Space Jam sequel as a cameo. But it's one that I'm really excited to check out. The next category is Angry Animals, and for that I've gone with 1963's The Birds, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. Not much can be said about this film that hasn't already been said, especially by someone who hasn't seen it, but it's one of the last major Hitchcock films that I have to see. Not sure how scary for me a film about killer birds can be, but I'm still excited to watch it nonetheless. The next category is detective films, and for that I've gone with 1987's Angel Heart, starring Robert De Niro. I love detective films, I love cat and mouse films, I love investigative journalism and films, so to me this film seemed like something right down my alley. It is about a detective who is searching for a woman in New Orleans and navigates through the horrors of voodoo. The next category is film you haven't seen in over 10 years. For that, I've gone with David Fincher's 2007 film, Zodiac. Zodiac is a film that I saw when it came out. I think I was 8 years old, and it absolutely terrified me. Have not watched it since, but I think it's time to finally get back out there, give it another shot. As a kid, I really liked it. I just thought it was horrifying, so I'm interested to see how I think of it now. The next category is kids horror, and for that, I went with 1987's Monster Squad. I don't know too much about the Monster Squad. I know that it's essentially all of the Universal monsters come to life and a bunch of kids fight them on Halloween. So that sounds like a really fun idea. But essentially, any pro wrestling fans or fans of the Major Wrestling Figure podcast know Matt Cardona. It's one of his favorite movies. He talks about it all the time. So because of that, I wanted to watch it. That leads me to the next category, which is making of documentaries. And for that, I've gone with 2018's Wolfman's Got Nards, which is a story of the Monster Squad. Cardona's interviewed in that. So once again, another film that I want to watch. The next category is video game horror, and for that I've picked 2025's Until Dawn. I'm a moderate gamer, nothing too crazy. I've never played Until Dawn, but I know that it has its fans. Unfortunately, I know that this movie does not have its fans because essentially it is an adaptation in name only. From what I've heard, they completely ditched the gimmick and the monsters in the game and just kind of did their own thing, which is a puzzling decision to me, kind of stupid, but I want to watch it anyway. The next category is witchcraft, and for that I've gone with 2016's The Love Witch. Essentially, this is a film about a witch who goes around putting spells on dudes to make them fall in love with her. Would totally work on me. But the main reason I know about this film is because I see it all over Twitter and Letterboxd and Instagram with like aesthetic posts where people kind of take it and use it for the layout of their profiles. Looks cool. Looks like an old film. I kind of like when newer films try and go for that old 60s look. So I'm going to give it a shot. The next category is anthology films. And for that, I've gone with 1969's Night Gallery. This film was supposed to be a pilot for a TV show called Night Gallery, hosted by Rod Serling of The Twilight Zone, but instead they took that pilot and turned it into a feature film, with one of the anthologies being directed by Steven Spielberg. I'm a huge Twilight Zone fan, so I would love to see if this film kind of carries the same vibe. The next category is made-for-TV horror, and for that I went with 1999's Curse of the Blair Witch. So essentially this was like a made-for-TV quasi-sequel to the Blair Witch Project. It's essentially an in-universe documentary TV special about the Blair Witch and what happened to the three characters from the film. The idea of in-universe supplementary films, stuff like documentaries that take place within the universe, treats it like it's real, kind of like Lake Mungo or the Poughkeepsie tapes. Those kinds of things always scare me a lot more than just a regular documentary. The Blair Witch, to me, is one of the greatest horror films of all time, so I'm excited to watch that. The next category is bad sequels, and for that I've gone with 1997's An American Werewolf in Paris. An American Werewolf in London is one of my all-time favorite films. I think it's one of the greatest films ever made. To me, it's one of the greatest love tragedies in all of modern cinema. The same probably will not be said for An American Werewolf in Paris. But I like werewolves, and I like bad movies. I think you can tell by now. So we'll see. The next category is short films. And for that, I've gone with 1995's Runaway Brain. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is a Disney animated short from the 90s focusing on Mickey Mouse. Essentially, Mickey Mouse gets his brain swapped with someone else and becomes possessed, kind of like a Frankenstein/zombie creature. And it was something that kind of got pulled and banned from release after people complained that it was too scary for kids. I think Disney's kind of poked fun at it over the years, but I don't think you can still get Runaway Brain on physical media. It's certainly not on Disney+. So I'm excited to watch it to see what all the discussion's about. The next category is LGBTQ horror, and for that I've gone with 2020's The Craft Legacy. The Craft is a really great Halloween film. It's one that everybody should watch. It's a lot of fun. For the sequel, I've heard not so great things, but it has Kaylee Spaney as the lead, and she's one of my favorite current actresses, so I'm excited to give it a shot. Next up, we have Shudder Original as a category, Shudder being its own horror movie streaming service. They've put out a lot of great stuff. They do a lot of cool things for the horror community. So the film that I've gone with is 2025's Clown in a Cornfield. Feels like it's got Halloween vibes, kind of the exact thing I'm looking for this time of year, so we'll see. The next category is animated horror, and for that I've gone with 1985's Vampire Hunter D. This is known as one of the greatest animes of all time. It's one that I've wanted to watch for a long time. Essentially, the story here is a woman is bit by a vampire, and she hires a vampire bounty hunter to kill her vampire before she turns. I know the sequel to it is regarded as even better and one of the also best animes out there, so I'm excited to watch this one. Maybe I'll get to the second one this year too. The next category is Wes Craven. For that, we've gone with 1991's The People Under the Stairs. Craven is a master of horror, but I've seen most of his major films, so I kind of had to go for a more niche one, or at least niche to me, and that is The People Under the Stairs. The reason I picked it is because the description said it's about a kid who gets trapped in the one house in the neighborhood that everyone avoids. I think growing up, everyone kind of has that experience of that one house that's kind of creepy that you don't want to get caught walking in front of alone. Next up, we have documentary, and for that, I went with the 2016 film Beware the Slender Man. Now, the Slender Man is not something that I ever heard of until, I want to say, my freshman year of high school, around 2012, and it was a concept that creeped me out. I know there's some real-life tragedy associated with it, but I'm not exactly sure what that is. So we'll see. I think horror documentaries are a unique beast. It's not something that gets made often, so I'm excited to see how it's handled. Next category is comedy horror, and for that I went with 1985's The Stuff. All my life I've heard about the killer yogurt horror movie called The Stuff, and I'm really excited to see it. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is one of my favorite horror movies because it's so goofy, it's so dumb, but it's so cool and refreshing with what we see in the horror genre. I'm intrigued to see if The Stuff will carry that same weight. Just the impression I get from it, it's got some Halloween, Season of the Witch vibes, it's got some Body Snatchers vibes. Who knows what we're getting into here. The next category is a film with a color in the title, and for that I went with Fade to Black for 1980. I feel like in the horror genre, a lot of the kind of most striking titles are ones that use color to create imagery, so I felt like that would be a cool idea to create it as its own category. Fade to Black is about a film buff who goes on a killing spree fighting people who he deems as mean to him. It's an interesting concept as someone who loves movies. I'm excited to see what kind of references they're able to slip into this film and see how interesting or fun they can make it. One of the main reasons I picked it is because of the header on Letterboxd, because it is really creepy looking. The next category is horror remake, and for that I went with 2015's Poltergeist. Now this film was absolutely dog-walked when it got released. I don't think I saw a single positive review. Of course, Poltergeist being one of the greatest horror films of all time. Who needed a remake? Certainly not me. But I'm going to watch it anyway because it's got Sam Rockwell in it, and that sounds fun. The next category is Haunted House, and for that I went with 2011's Silent House. Another film that I've heard is absolutely horrible, but it has Elizabeth Olsen in it, and she is my favorite actress, and I'm madly in love with her. But who knows, right? Maybe it'll be good. Maybe I'm wasting my time, but I'm excited to watch it anyway. The next category is film based on a book, and for that I went with 1998's Phantoms. Realistically, I know pretty much nothing about this film other than Affleck was the bomb and Phantoms yo, as Jay and Silent Bob would say. But it seems like a cool premise. It's got a cool poster. I know it has to do with some monsters coming from the ground and attacking people in a small town, so we'll see how it is. The next category is apocalyptic horror, and for that I went with 2008's The Happening. Widely regarded as one of the worst mainstream commercial films to ever be released, I went with Shyamalan's The Happening, specifically for that reputation. You got to take the good with the bad in life, and I'm someone, I'm a completist, right? Especially with movies. I want to see everything. So I'm going to go out of my way to watch The Happening, and we'll see how bad it truly is. The next category is a film with a number in the title that is not a sequel. For that, I went with 2007's 30 Days of Night. A film that takes place, it's a vampire film, it takes place in the 30 days that Alaska experiences no sunlight, which I've always thought is a crazy cool concept. And it's Josh Hartnett fighting vampires in Alaska. Does it get cooler than that? I don't know. We'll find out. The next category is film with a snowy setting, and for that I went with none other than the prequel to the best snowy setting horror film, and that is the 2011's The Thing. Now this is a prequel to The Thing, which I think The Thing's one of the best isolated stories of all time, so I don't know how interesting a prequel would be, but I'm excited to see it anyway. The Thing is one of my favorite films of all time, maybe the greatest horror film of all time, so who knows. I know that they went away from practical effects like the original film. This one's more CG, which I don't know how I feel about that necessarily, but I'm excited to give it a shot. The next category is James Wan. Now, I've seen every James Wan film but one, which is Dead Silence, but that is on the Just Smash Film Challenge, which I'll talk about later in the year. So I had to go with a film that he produced, which is the 2024 remake of Salem's Lot. Salem's Lot, the original, the 80s film, I watched last year for the Just Smash Film Challenge and actually really enjoyed it. It's a great vampire story. I think it's a Stephen King book. So I'm excited to see what this new film looks like and what James Wan's influence on it was. The next category is film you've never heard of. For that, I went with 1988's Apprentice to Murder, and the main reason that I picked this film is because of Donald Sutherland. Donald Sutherland is one of my all-time favorite actors, especially within the horror genre with Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Don't Look Now. I don't know too much about this film. I know that essentially it's based on a true story where a young person met a hitchhiker who claims to be a messenger from God. The next category is films having to do with the devil. And for that, I've gone with 1981's The Final Conflict, which is actually a sequel to The Omen. Essentially, in this film, The Omen, Damien, the Antichrist, he's a fully grown adult now and he works within the U.S. government. Essentially, the apocalyptic prophecy foretold in the Bible is starting to come to truth with Damien as an adult, so this film kind of deals with the Antichrist and the second coming of God. The next category is transportation horror, which sounds dumb, but that was kind of the point, to come up with dumb categories. And for that, I went with 2008's Midnight Meat Train. The main reason I picked this film, it's a film about a serial killer kind of down in the subway system of New York. The main reason I picked it is because Bradley Cooper's in it. Bradley Cooper's one of my favorite actors, and I want to see how this goes. The next category is John Carpenter, and for Carpenter, I went with 1994's In the Mouth of Madness. The premise of this book is about a fan base of a horror author whose books kind of control them to make them do crazy things. I think it's a possession film, I'm not exactly sure. But Carpenter is the master of horror. He's got the best films with Halloween and The Thing. So I'm excited to see what he does with this one. Films that take place on Halloween. For that, I've gone with 2013's All Hallows Eve. Now, this film is most notably known as the introduction of Art the Clown from the Terrifier series. Me, personally, not a Terrifier fan. I know that's sacrilegious to a lot of modern-day horror fans. I don't really get it. Didn't really like the first film. Haven't seen the other two. But I like Halloween vibes. I like films that take place on Halloween. I don't think there's enough of those. So I'm excited to see what this film is all about. The next category is 25th anniversary. So films released in the year 2000. And for that, I've gone with Ginger Snaps. Ginger Snaps is a classic on film Twitter when it comes to spooky season and Halloween horror. It's a film about two young sisters and werewolves. I see edits for it all the time. I've had people tell me to watch it for a long time. So I'm excited to finally watch it. The next category is Stephen King. And for that, I've gone with 1996's Thinner. This film is about an obese man who has a hex placed on him, and he starts rapidly losing weight and has to do what he can to break the curse before he dies. It's a more niche Stephen King story, which is kind of what I was looking for, but the main reason that I picked this film is because it's directed by Tom Holland. Not Spider-Man, but the dude that directed Fright Night and Child's Play. The next category is The Woods. I think some of the most classic horror stories out there all start and end in the woods. So with that, I've gone with 2009's Antichrist, directed by Lars von Trier. Now, I'm not a von Trier guy. The only film of his that I've seen is Melancholia, which I did not like, but probably should give a rewatch because everyone else does. But Antichrist seems to be one of those films that has the most striking imagery and visual horror that I've pretty much ever seen anybody talk about. I think that it's a play on Adam and Eve. I don't know too much about it. I know they go to a cabin in the woods called Eden, and it's about a man and his wife. Called Antichrist. You know, maybe I'm making stuff up. Who knows? But the film looks super creepy, and I love Willem Dafoe. So let's see how it goes. The next category is Giant Monster. And for that, I've gone with 1988's The Blob. Now, I've not seen the original film of The Blob, but I'm excited to see the 80s film. I've heard it's really good. I've heard it's really creative and exciting, and I kind of love random creature features like this film. The next category is church horror. And for that, I've gone with 2024's The First Omen. The First Omen is a film that kind of blew everybody away from what I've heard. I don't know that anyone expected it to be too much being a prequel to The Omen, but everybody acts like this film is incredible. I know it pays homage to the 80s film Possession, which is really exciting because that film is phenomenal. But I also like underdog films like this that kind of come out and blow everybody away and demolish expectations. The next category is body horror, and for that I've gone with 1980's Altered States. This film is directed by Ken Russell, like The Devils. The main reason that I picked it is consciousness is super interesting to me. The different states of being, the different states of living, dreams, all of that fascinates me, and I know that this film deals with that a lot. The film also has William Hurt, who's one of my favorite actors, and pretty much all the imagery I've seen from this film is pretty creepy. Next category is Arrow Video. For any physical media collectors, you would know about Arrow Video. It's a film distribution company for, physical media. They really specialize in horror, and they take niche horror films, older horror films, films that didn't get enough love, and they put out really cool Blu-ray releases of them. The Funhouse, as far as I know, is a film about a serial killer in a carnival, which sounds dumb, but also sounds fun. Sounds like campy 80s horror, which is what I want. And if I like it, I'll buy it. The next category is films on your watch list, and for that I went with 2011's The Oregonian. The main reason that I added this film to my watch list way back in 2015 is because the poster really creeps me out. It's kind of childish, but I don't know, something about it just gives me bad vibes. It kind of looks like a bloody Kermit the Frog drawing weird thing. I don't know what the film's about too much, but I know it's time for me to watch it. Next category is slasher films, and for that I've gone with 2006's Hatchet. Slashers are just a classic part of the horror genre. It's its own subsection that's given us some truly incredible films and some bad ones. But I know that Victor Crowley is one of the modern horror icons, one of the modern horror characters that people love. So I decided to watch Hatchet to see what it's all about. Films you need to give a second chance. For that I've gone with 2013's remake of Carrie. Now, when I initially saw this film when it came out, I had not seen the original, didn't know too much about it, but I know that I didn't really like it too much. Since then, I've seen the original and I do like it, so who knows? I'll give this film another shot. Maybe it's good. Next category is found footage films, and for that I've gone with 2008's Quarantine. For those that don't know, Quarantine is an American remake of the film Wreck. Wreck is a phenomenal film. It was on the Just Smash Film Challenge 2 years ago. Essentially, it is a found footage film about a news reporter that gets quarantined in a building while a zombie outbreak takes place. For the last category, perhaps the most important category, one that should be on everybody's October watch list literally every year, the category is Scooby-Doo. For that, I've gone with 2000's Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders. I'm someone that watches Scooby-Doo films all throughout the year, but I try and cram as many as I can into October every year. And one of the last major Scooby-Doo films I have yet to see is Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, which is kind of from that Renaissance area that also has Zombie Island and Cyber Chase. I've heard this film's amazing. I love the animation from this era of Scooby-Doo, and I love the way that the films were handled in this area of Scooby-Doo. And it's funny to me now that I'm spending the most time out of all 60 films I've mentioned talking about Scooby-Doo, but I think that's a perfect representation of what this channel is all about. That's Mashtober. Like I said, am I going to watch all of those films this year? Probably not. Hopefully I'll at least watch half of them, and then maybe next year I'll watch the other half. I don't know. But if you would like to play along, if you would like to make your own Mashtober, take these categories and create your own lists, that would be cool. Or even if not, just let me know in the comments what your horror watch list for October is going to be. What films do you watch every year? What horror films do you hate? Which horror films are too scary for you to watch? Let us know, because I love hearing about this stuff. That being said, I've been Josh from Just Mash. Until next time.